All right, I cut myself off there. I did. I cut myself off. I did. There's Rocky. Never get cut off in the middle of a rant. I'll tell you, bad thing to get cut off in the middle of a rant. Where do I open this now? I don't know. You know what? I'm done messing around with it. I'm just going to open it up. I got the Swiss Chowlette. Got 2 Swiss Chowlette chicken pies. That's right. These are right from Switzerland, you know. They're Swiss Chowlette. Very fancy. Holy smokes. Yeah, look at that, eh? See, that's what it's supposed to look like. It's from Swiss Chowlette. Good stuff from Swiss Chowlette. Okay, it says since 1954. So these pies were made in 1954. They still look really good. I'm impressed. They keep well. I don't know what kind of preservative Swiss Chowlette puts in their pies, but they keep really well. They do. Swiss Chowlette, Rocky. Have you ever wanted to go to Swiss Chowlette? Yeah. Holy smokes, man. Swiss Chowlette. There we go now. They close it up again. Swiss Chowlette, that's good stuff. When I was a little boy, if you had money to go out to eat and you went to a place like that, people would go la-di-da. Look at you being all fancy. They would. They'd make fun of you. They'd say, next thing you'll be buying a Cadillac. Yeah, you'll be buying a Cadillac car next thing. Darn right. Okay, now, let's see what it says here. Thinking you're somebody. Ooh, nice shiny box here, eh? Microwave or conventional oven. Preheat oven to 375 degrees. Ooh, that's hot, eh? Remove pie from packaging and remove plastic film. Place on middle oven rack and bake for 40 to 50 minutes. Yeah, 40 to 50 minutes. That's a long time. Yeah, we got to bake this pie, Rocky. Get ready. We're going to bake a pie. It's going to be awesome. 375 degrees. That'll cook something. It will, I promise. Here we go now. Let me see. Okay, so that'd be about midway between 350 and 400. Put it right there. Now this only goes to 30 minutes. So we're going to have to cook it for 30 minutes, and then when it goes ding, we'll have to cook it for another 15 to 20 minutes. This is exciting. I'm excited. Are you excited, Rocky? I see. I'm also excited. I am. Oh, you're watering these. Look at this. He puts his feet in his water. Look at that disgusting mess. Yeah, you make a big mess, you do. All right, here we go now. Yeah, he makes a big mess with his feet in the water. He likes to wash his feet. He's very particular about his feet, is Rocky, eh? Let me turn out the light here so I'm not being all uncivilized and blinding you. Because he was blinded by the light. Dressed up like a douchebag in the middle of the night. I'm pretty sure that's not the words, but anyway. I don't think anybody knows the words to that song. Blinded by the light. Dressed up like a douchebag in the middle of the night. I don't know how a douchebag dresses up, but I'm guessing they dress pretty good. Yeah, they do. Okay, now. All right, here we go now. Let's get the water here. Yeah, the silicone sister with her manager, mister, told me that I could be a fake. But I really wanted to be a douchebag because they dress up really nice. Yeah, I like nice clothes, so I wanted to be a douchebag. Because the douchebags always seem to be dressed very dapper. Okay, now, here we go. Yeah, enough silliness. Enough merriment. As Father Mulcahy on MASH would say, enough jocularity. Remember, he used to talk about jocularity. And he used to say it was enough jocularity. That's enough jocularity. Too much jocularity is not a good thing, you know. I've heard you can develop jock itch from too much jocularity. That might be just a rumor, though. I don't know. Maybe. Okay, now, let me see here. We'll bring these dishes in so the vegetable peeler don't get any more rusty than it already is. Look at that thing. Rusted out. Rusted out worse than my dad's 1973 Buick Century station wagon that he owned in the early 80s. Had a 73 Buick Century station wagon and a 66 Dodge Polara sedan. The Dodge Polara was the better of the two cars, actually. But it used to eat starters. It used to eat starting motors. We always carried 2 spare starting motors in the back seat. We'd go out to Telford's wrecking yard and buy starter motors for that car. I think we were paying $10 a piece or something back then for used starter motors. Long time ago now. We'd have two starter motors ready to go in the back of the car. Change the thing out in 10 minutes in the parking lot. But yeah, that was the better of the two cars. The 73 Buick Century station wagon, it was so rusty that the back seat was actually falling through the floor and stuff. And you couldn't open the back door on the driver's side either because it was fused shut with rust. That's how bad it was. Anyway, I remember that car. And the exhaust manifold was busted. And so it was loud. And the exhaust would go back into the car, choke the shit out of you. Or you were going down the road, you'd be choking on exhaust fumes. But, you know, there were so many holes in the body that the fumes didn't really build up in the car like they might have if the body had been good. So there was that, at least. But anyway, yeah, I remember that car. And, yeah. Anyway, it was all that vegetable peeler is about as rusty as that car. There's an interesting story behind that car, actually. My dad had a sideline back in the 70s where he did television antennas. Remember the old towers, TV towers on people's houses there with the antenna on the top of them? You could climb up the thing. It looked like a ladder, but it had like 3 sides to it. Anyway, my dad used to erect those. And he was good. He could do television repair. He could put up the antennas. He could just do it all, you know. And he had this little business doing that. Anyway, hey Rocky. Anyway, towards the end of the life of the 1969 Ford LTD that my dad had, he switched it over to just to be used when we went on jobs, you know, to do these antennas. I used to go with him on these jobs. So the last year or so that my dad had that car, I used to ride in it with him to jobs, and I was like the go fetch boy or whatever. I'd go and go to the old Ford and get whatever my dad needed. He'd tell me he needed a box of such and such a thing, or get me one of these, or get me one of those, or whatever. I go to the car and get it. The trunk of the car and the back seat of the car were full of parts for these things, and he had a set of roof racks, and he'd put the towers themselves up on the roof racks. They all came in sections, so you'd have the towers up on the roof rack on the roof of the car, you know, because he had a set of roof racks that would clamp down to the drip rail over the doors. Anyway, we would go out and do different jobs anyway, putting up TV antennas. But then when he got rid of the 69 Ford, he needed a car just to use, a second car just to use for that kind of work. And so he went out to Garfield Leach's Shell station on Highway 7. Garfield Leach used to sell some used cars. And he bought a 73 Buick Century station wagon from Garfield Leach. But here's the thing, there were two 73 Buick Century station wagons out at Garfield Leach's place. One of them was just like new. That was the one my dad bought. The other one was a car, well, the one that was just like new had actually belonged to a business called the Perth Cheese Palace. That was actually the name of it, because we lived in the town of Perth, Ontario. And this business was called the Perth Cheese Palace. And it was just east of Perth on Highway 7. And it was a business that sold cheese. You know, I probably don't have to tell you that, but still, I will. It was a business that sold cheese. Anyway, that car had been their car. That was the car my dad bought from Garfield Leach. It was the good one of the two. The other car was a rusted out thing there with all kinds of problems that my dad didn't buy. But as I may have mentioned in other videos, my dad really liked his beer. He did. He really liked to drink a beer. Yeah, he'd have a bottle of beer and he'd really enjoy it. Then he'd have another bottle of beer and he'd really enjoy that one too. And then he'd have another bottle of beer and he'd enjoy that one. He just really enjoyed his beer. Well, my dad showed up to pick the car up after that he had bought. Showed up out at Garfield Leach's Shell station on Highway number 7, but more to the west than the east anyway, on the outskirts of Perth. Showed up there falling down drunk to pick his car up. Well, Garfield Leach wasn't the most honest individual. Let's just put it that way. And Garfield Leach saw a chance. Hey, I can unload that wreck back there on this drunken guy, and then I can keep the good car. So he switched around the paperwork real quick, and he gave my dad the rusted out Hulk. Now, it was dark out when my dad went to get the car, and of course the car was parked around behind the service station in the dark, where it was really dark, not out front where everything was lighted. And my dad was drunk. And so he brought the old Buick home. This was like in 1979 or so. He brought this 73 Buick Century home, believing that he was driving home the car he had bought. Which, of course, he wasn't. He was driving home the car that he hadn't bought because it was a wreck. Anyway, so that's how we ended up with that car. We didn't get the car that belonged to the Cheese Palace, even though that's the one my dad bought. Instead, we got the wreck. Garfield Leach pulled a fast one on my dad. Now, to be fair, my dad showed up drunk to pick up a car at night, which you probably shouldn't do, really, you know, but anyway, that was my dad. He, like I say, he liked his beer. So After work, he had some beers, and then he went to get his car in the dark, drunk. Anyway, we had that car until we had it until the spring of 1983. We did. So from 79 to 83, like I say, the car was a total disaster in most respects, but it did the job reluctantly, but it did do the job for like 4 years. And that was the car then that we used for our television antennas after the 69 Ford was gone. Yeah, it was a station wagon, Rocky, a 73 Buick Century station wagon. It was. I can't recall what engine it had in it or anything. I remember, though, that exhaust manifold was broken, and I'll tell you, that was loud. It'd just about deafen you when you were riding in it. And the other thing about it too, this is back in the days of AM radio. And of course that car came equipped with a beautiful push-button AM radio that worked really good as long as the engine wasn't running. If the engine was running, then the engine would interfere with the radio. And so, now, I mean, you could barely hear the radio anyway. You could barely hear yourself think because of the noise from the exhaust system. But still, yeah, some of the stuff we had years ago, some of the stuff we got away with years ago. Yeah, you can't do that now, I'll tell you. They'd pull that thing off the road in 5 seconds flat now. But yeah, I remember that, though, the old AM radio, just when you'd start the car up, all you'd hear is static, you know. And of course, the loud exhaust system of the car. But it was one of those deals where virtually everything was wrong with that car, yet it would not die. It just wouldn't die. And that's the thing about those old cars that I really miss, is the fact that, you know, the car would technically be deceased, but it would still run, and it would still get you around. It wouldn't do it in comfort, mind you, and it wouldn't do it safely, but it would do it. So that's all that mattered to us in those days. It was survival, you know. Anyway, that's the story there. My dad gave up the antenna business in around 1980 when my parents split up. And he kept the car, though, like I say, for another 3 years or so. Yeah. Quite a thing, anyway. But that's the story. We'll see you later.